As the End SARS protests continue in most parts of the country, and the National Economic Council asks governors to take charge in their different territories, issues of constitutional amendment comes to bear. Could that be the way out? And the ruling APC has come out to defend the nomination of President Buhari's social media aide, Loretta Onoche, for INEC National Commissioner job. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today on Channels Television and it's Friday. So let's get started everyone. Let's tell you about some of the reactions coming from the ruling All Progressives Congress APC. The party today had come out in defense of Ms. Loretta Onoche, President Buhari's social media assistant who was nominated as the National Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. The APC is responding to the reactions from the opposition PDP. The ruling APC is asking the Senate to ignore what they describe as a PDP's selective criticism of Loretta Onoche's appointment as INEC Commissioner. The APC is alleging that there are some top officials of INEC who hold partisan views, and they are asking the Ninth Senate to stick with the facts and issues by ignoring the PDP's opposition. Before we get into our major conversation tonight about the way out of the #EndSARS stalemate, the young Nigerians are not backing down, and it doesn't look that they are going to do that anytime soon. So what is the way out? Could it be restructuring, constitutional review, constitutional amendment? We'll talk about that, but first, let's check out some of your stories on our political roundup.
President Muhammadu Buhari has met with his Senegalese counterpart Macky Sall. The Senegalese leader is commending the Nigerian government's support, especially as regards the cost of the war against insurgency in the entire Lake Chad Basin areas. The Senegalese president gave the commendation at the end of a dinner meeting with President Buhari at the presidential villa Abuja on Thursday night. He also lauded Nigeria for supporting the efforts of the Economic Community of West African States towards the restoration of peace and constitutional order in Mali. The EndSARS agitation continues across some parts of the country, with youth still going to the streets to seek reforms in the Nigeria police for the 10th day. In Lagos, some of the protesters gathered at the House of Assembly Drive at Alausa, which has been their converging point since the agitations began. At some point, they took a break and observed the Jumat prayers. Meanwhile, the protesters also plan to embark on a candlelight procession as part of the action. Similar scenario played out at the Lekki Tollgate area on the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway. The action continues, with the protesters intensifying their agitations.
Police brutality! End police brutality! End police brutality!
And in the nation's capital, the protesters have defied the FCDA Security Committee order banning street demonstrations and have taken to the streets once again. On their way, they stopped their march around Area 10, while some of the protesters took some time to observe the Jumat prayers. They had earlier converged on the Unity Fountain, with some of them dressed in black and wearing face masks in line with COVID-19 protocols. The Young Progressives Party is calling for the restructuring of the country as a way of addressing the demands of the EndSARS protesters. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the National Publicity Secretary of the party, Comrade Igbola Martins, explains that the demands of the protesters is just a fraction of the problem in the country. Comrade Martins adds that the protest has gone beyond calls for police reform to include issues like a reduction in the cost of governance, the electoral reform, and corruption in public office. The All Progressives Congress APC in Ebonyi State has vowed to wrestle power from the People's Democratic Party in the state come 2023. The state chairman, Eze Nwachukwu, disclosed during the crucial leaders and stakeholders meeting held at the party secretariat in Abakaliki, the Ebonyi State capital. He says all warring factions and aggrieved members that led to losing the 2019 election in the state have all reconciled, and a committee has been set up to ensure that issue of candidacy doesn't occur again, while passing a vote of confidence on President Muhammadu Buhari's led administration. The Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu, also emphasized on the need for peace and unity in the party.
The journey has started, and whatever challenges, problems, or whatever that we have, we will overcome them.
Thank you so much, everyone, and let's get talking. Channel Television has kept you up to date with some of the protests and the scenes at some of the protest centers across the nation where the young Nigerians have taken to the street. But beyond the protests and beyond the conversation around what is happening, we're looking at the solutions. And tonight, we should continue our conversation around that subject. So the young Nigerians are asking and talking tough about their demands against the issue of police brutality and what the government should do. And they continue on the 10th day with demonstrators looking more prepared than ever to drive home their demands for a thorough reformation of the police force. Tonight, we shall be looking at the agitations and the ways forward, especially from the prism of a constitutional amendment and the role of or interventions of the National Assembly. Yesterday, after the meeting of the National Economic Council, NEC, the NEC agreed and asked the governors in the 36 states of the Federation to take charge of some of the resolutions that they made. Some of the resolutions include that there shall be immediate establishment of state-based judicial panels of inquiry across the country to receive and investigate complaints of police brutality or extrajudicial killings. Governors and the Ministry of Federal Capital Territory to take charge of the interface and contact with protesters in their respective domains. There are a series of that, and also all of these, the modalities in which this will take. And they also gave a timeline, 6 months. Let's now check out what the National Assembly is doing in regards of it, because it does look like the reformation has to also do with the law. And the National Assembly is in process of constitutional amendment. And tonight also, we shall be having the former chairman of the NHRC, the National Human Rights Commission, Professor Chidi Odinkalu, also joins us on the program. And I have the Senate spokesperson, Senator Ajibola Basiru. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming tonight on the program. Perhaps I should get Professor Odinkalu's I should shoot first on the program tonight. From what we have seen, Prof, the NEC resolution yesterday, do you think that is the way out?
Hello?
Prof, we can hear you. I'm asking if you have a feeling that the National Economic Council's resolution yesterday asking the state governors to take charge and they're giving a breakdown of what to do, is that the possible solution?
Sadly, I have to say no. Look, we've got to put responsibility where it belongs. What does the NEC resolution say? It says that the states shall set up, it basically outsources responsibility for investigating the atrocities of SARS to the 36 states and the FCT, requesting them to set up judicial commissions of inquiry, which shall be chaired by a retired High Court judge, include a retired senior police officer, 2 representatives of civil society, 1 representative of students, 1 representative of youth, 1 representative of the National Human Rights Commission, and 1 representative of the State Attorney General. When you add up all of these people, basically what it means is 37 retired judges, 37 retired police officers, 37 youth, 37 students, 74 civil society people, 37 representatives of attorneys general, and 37 representatives of the National Human Rights Commission. That adds up to 296 people at various state levels investigating the atrocities of SARS. To begin, and that does not include the support staff or sitting allowances. To begin with, that's wasteful. That's number one, just at the practical level. Number two, it's also wasteful of attention spans because you can't focus on anything. There'll be, there's basically this merry-go-round gravy train of all of these people running around chasing SARS atrocities, right? But there's a third issue, which is fundamental. Police is a federal matter. All SARS atrocities are federal atrocities. To outsource that to the states basically means the federal government does not want to own this issue. And to that extent, it means the federal government is bringing neither good faith nor goodwill to addressing this matter. It goes further. It's not just that police is a federal issue, item 45 in the exclusive legislative list. It is also that police, under section 215, sub 3 of the Constitution, is actually owned by the president personally. All right? So that the president is the only person who can tell the Inspector General of Police what to do. But state judicial service commissions are directed at state governors, not at the president, which means that they cannot make recommendations that the president can countenance. The federal government will simply ignore everything because these are not matters for the federal government, and it doesn't really, as a matter of law, concern them. So basically, the recommendations of NEC, quite frankly, as a matter of law and the Constitution and how Nigeria is run, mean only one thing. They are not interested. They want to kick this into the long grass and tell the young people, it's okay, just continue, we'll humor you. That is not the way to go. It says federal government is not serious.
All right. Let's get the spokesperson of the Senate into the conversation. The young Nigerians went to the doorstep of the National Assembly, but to me, it does look like some of the agitations and the demands of the NSAS protesters are looking in the manner, in the way of constitutional refreshing the Constitution or amending the Constitution. But I know the National Assembly is thinking about it, Senator Basiru. What is the intervention of the National Assembly in this regard? These young Nigerians are not backing down.
Yes, I think first and foremost, the genesis of the present round of protests across the country has to do with the atrocities and the acts of brutality on the part of the SARS operatives. But of course, that itself has to be located within the context of the larger agitation of Nigerian people, not only the youth, about need for reform, for restructuring along key lines. One of these is the issue of insecurity. As we know, in the past 1 year of the 9th Assembly, we have had cause to interrogate this issue and pass series of resolutions on the need to address the problem of insecurity in Nigeria. And of course, we've even made resolutions on the need to change the service chiefs, including the IG, as a way of bringing new blood into this operation. So the resolutions earlier passed by the National Assembly is in sync with the present agitation. And on the present agitation for the reform of the police, the National Assembly had a security summit by which we recommended the need to have budgetary and operational decentralization of Nigerian police along zonal line. Personally, as a senator from Osun Central, I've also sponsored a constitutional review bill to have state police. I believe the country is so large, our security challenges is so huge, and there's a need for us to marry the question of security with rule of law and human rights of our people. And it is in this context we will be able to address this. So, but beyond the issue of reformation of the brutal SARS operative is the issue of how do we police our country, and also the question of opportunity, for the young, people in the society. Yes, the present administration has talked about social intervention program, but how deep has this social intervention program in addressing the question of mass unemployment of our youth, in addressing the question of getting our society back to productivity, and in addressing key infrastructure that will stimulate our economy? So for us at the National Assembly, just as a part of the resolutions we took yesterday, is a further wake-up call for us to synergize with the executive. While we pass resolutions, we think it's also incumbent on the executive not to take our resolutions as merely advisory, but a call from people who have a duty and responsibility to the people. Specifically on the question of constitutional amendment,
Senator,
have to look at the myriad of subject matter on the exclusive legislative list. I think it's unwieldy for the federal government to have so much responsibility in that regard.
Senator, let's take a break. But when we come back, we'll look at some practical moves that have been suggested, how the federal government is reacting to this, the National Assembly, and of course the issue of human rights and the way forward. We are entering into the weekend and looking ahead to the new week. Are we going to go on like this? Will there be any change? Let's look deeper into that matter when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get back to the conversation with the Senate spokesperson, Senator Ajibala Basiru, and Professor Chidi Odinkalu, former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. Before I go back to Professor Odinkalu, Senator, one would think that this is a very critical moment in our history. When I spoke with the chairman of the Governors Forum yesterday, I mean, he made it clear that this is a critical moment in history for the nation, for the political elite. Now, the question now is that when these issues come up, a lot of people had said they thought that the National Assembly will burn the candles to give us an amendment of the law or come out with a position that will change things in few days.
The question so much is not about change of the law, but about implementation. You will recall that in a matter of some few weeks ago, the National Assembly came up with an amendment of the Nigerian Police Act, which has not been done for several decades. And embedded in this amendment is the idea of community policing and, of course, creating zonal structure, and also being able to have a more amenable police force. But even the amendment, and that is why the question of constitutional amendment is very imperative. Today, you still have the police force, as said by Professor Odinkalu, that it is still the prerogative of the federal government. What I said is that we need to go further and have a decentralized police force because of the size and logistic requirement of having a responsive and responsible police force. And I think that's one of the agenda of the constitutional amendment at the Senate. And I told you personally, I've sponsored since last year a bill in that regard. But beyond the question of legislative action is the need to take a timeous executive action. For instance, stopping the solution of the SARS is an executive action. You don't need a law because no law actually set up the SARS. Then the only issue we have is that rather than address some of the fallout of the solution of SARS, going to set up another tactical formation just immediately has also called to question of the sincerity of the police authority. And in the context of separation of power, our duty is to make resolutions, to deliberate and come up with decisions in sync with the requirement of our constituent. Then in terms of implementation, it is faster for the executive arm of government to make implementation. And as to the requirement and the demand of the present movement, the 5 requirements have been passed on to the Presidential Committee, and they have assured us that they have agreed to it and they start implementation. And of course, implementing it, whether at the executive or legislative level, will require time. And that is why it is imperative that the government should be operational, should not be impeded in being able to show good faith in implementing this. And of course, I must say that there is a need for confidence building between the government and the members of the public, particularly the youth who are on the streets.
All right. Let me bring back Professor Odinkalu. It's interesting when we have politicians who have part of their soul as activists, the same way we spoke with Governor Fayemi yesterday, who was once on the street and in the trenches. Senator Ajibala too was a student activist for a while in Lagos. Prof, if we are to look at practical steps, you have punctured part of the resolution of NEC of yesterday. Now, let me put you in a rather difficult situation because, of course, people are saying that the next president of the country should come from the east. And so you are from the southeast of the country. So if you were the president, Prof, if you are the president of Nigeria as you're seated right there, what would you do differently from what the federal government has put to the table? Prof, it's as if that you have muted your... please check your audio, and maybe you can...
Okay.
All right.
Do you hear me now?
So, yeah,
Good.
you can start from the very top, yeah.
I'll never be the president of Nigeria. I don't aspire to it. I'm not going back into public service. I am happy as a floor mat of a citizen. Okay.
Well, let's assume you are. Let's just for a second assume that you are.
I will not indulge that particular hypothetical. But look, let us be clear. In 2005, the Jewumi Presidential Commission on Administration of Justice Reform reported. 2006, DIG Muhammad Ahmad Presidential Commission on Police Reform reported. 2008, IGP MD Yusuf Presidential Commission on Police Reform reported. 2008, Honorable Justice Chief Justice Uwais panel on electoral reform reported. Why do I mention that? Because about 40% of his report was on police and election rigging. Okay? A lot of people forget that. 2012, DIG Pario Sayande Presidential Commission on Police Reform reported. 2019, Tony Ojukwu NHRC Committee Investigation Panel, Presidential Panel, by the way, on SARS reform reported. None of these have been implemented. That's why we're here. That people are using commissions and inquiries to deflect from the issues. So first thing, a president does not need any of this drama. Go back, collect all of these reports, implement them. If you actually look at the reports, the Namadami Commission, Presidential Commission, the MD Yusuf Presidential Commission, and Pario Sayande Presidential Commission made the same recommendations, from recruitment to decentralization, to management and personnel, to police welfare, to discipline and budgets. Their recommendations were the same. There are criminals in the police force. MD Yusuf said so. How did that happen? Politicians hired their thugs to the police, and the police, to use the expression of the MD Yusuf report, has ended up with an undesirable workforce. That's why we're here. There are criminals running the thing. I didn't say so. MD Yusuf, who was the most senior living Inspector General of Police, said so. Pario Sayande agrees. The Madami agrees. They come from 3 different parts of the country, right? So we have ideas that are viable, but government does not want to act on them. Now, this idea of outsourcing this to states just does not make sense and will not work. Can federal government get serious?
Prof, we just have a few seconds. Senate spokesperson, let me get your final thoughts in a few seconds before we close. Getting the young Nigerians off the street is very critical, because they said they would not leave until those demands are met. It seems that the list is getting longer by the day. But your party promised that it was going to do something as regarding the structure of this country. If you can speak truthfully to Nigerians, does your party have the political will to do that? It does look like time is ticking, and it's ticking out on your party's decision to do that, on the promise you've made to Nigerians in fixing this problem in 30 seconds. Give us the final word on the solution.
Okay. I think the way to see this is to look at the 2 efforts already put in place by the National Assembly. The 2 chambers have inaugurated their constitutional review committee. But beyond the effort of the National Assembly, I think the political leadership of our party has set up a tripartite committee that is consultative. I believe that this tripartite committee, comprising the executive, legislative, and the party, should really sit down together, and we are looking towards them taking up the manifesto of our party and see how we have a restructured Nigeria. I believe that unless this country is restructured, we are not really going anywhere. Just like I made a comment at the budget presentation, budget debate yesterday at the National Assembly, a situation whereby the current expenditure goes to over 70% of our annual budget will not augur well for free resources, for genuine development and economic advancement of our people. Without economic advancement of the people, without uplifting the welfare, we are still continue to have perennial problem of unemployment on a large scale, and then the challenges of reform of our society.
Senator Ajibola Basiru, Senate spokesperson, thank you indeed for your thoughts tonight. And Professor Chidi Odinkalu, former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Thank you so much indeed for your thoughts tonight, Prof. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And that's our show for today. It's Friday. The candlelight procession by the Nigerian youths are on the street in Lagos. They've blocked the Third Mainland Bridge, and they blocked also some parts of the nation's capital. We're monitoring all those for you right here on your home for the news, Channels Television. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm Sean Kimali. Have a wonderful weekend.